Alright guys, in this video we are going to be talking a little bit about the PlayStation 5 and Sony making some more recent announcements that they're apparently not going to be participating in GDC for obvious reasons, and this is creating a very interesting conversation, and so I just wanted to take some time here in this video to talk about it. People are now wondering what this means for the PlayStation 5. Is there a chance this console could actually end up being delayed into 2021? And even though that may sound insane to some people, it's actually not that far-fetched as of right now to imagine something like that potentially happening. And so we're going to take some time to go over this and discuss this. I may also have a second video coming later today. Don't hold me to that, but hopefully I can. If not, I'll get it out either tomorrow or Sunday. But before going any further, first of all, if you could leave the video a like if you think you're going to enjoy it, or if you enjoy the content in general, really helps it out. Hit the subscribe button. I also want to let you know that tomorrow I'm going to be doing the next episode of Press X podcast, and Brown Sugar will be returning. I know that a lot of you really enjoyed having him on, and so we're going to bring him on again, so you can look forward to that. It's going to happen tomorrow, Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free to show up and hang out. It will be live here on the channel. You can always watch it after the fact. But yeah, again, Brown Sugar is going to be there. It'll be a good time, so I hope to see you there. But getting into the video topic here, Sony recently announced that they will not be attending GDC, and this comes right after, almost immediately after, they announced that they are dropping out of Pax East. And this is due to health concerns, the well-being of their workforce, which is obviously something that I think pretty much everybody can understand. And it is a little bit disheartening because, again, Sony has been so quiet for so long, which I'm okay with, but there's some people who are really starting to think that this is becoming like a negative thing for Sony. I don't necessarily think that's true. I'm just of the mindset that Sony has big things to reveal, regardless of how impatient we may or may not feel. And with that in mind, it doesn't really matter when they decide to reveal it or announce it. It's going to be huge whenever they do, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 2.5 months from now. That's, in my opinion, that's just the truth of the matter. I think once Sony does start talking, they're not going to stop talking, and we're going to forget about this waiting period. We're going to forget it ever happened. So that's just my thoughts on that. I don't necessarily think it's a negative thing for Sony. I think they're just trying to be very precise, but them not attending GDC is kind of a big deal because GDC in general is a big deal for gaming, and especially at this point in time, we are right on the cusp of next generation happening. There's no doubt that the PlayStation 5 was going to be a massive thing here, and something I mentioned, I think it was in yesterday's video, I know I tweeted about it for sure, is that one of the things people were looking at here is that if Sony decided not to have any type of formal PlayStation 5 reveal of any sort, whether it's an event or through State of Play, before GDC happens, which GDC is happening between March 16th and March 20th, then there was a very good chance that there was going to be a bunch of leaks, because one of the things that developers are really looking forward to talking about and discussing with each other at GDC is next gen and the technology, and what they're going to be able to do and what they're going to be able to achieve. And so with that in mind, there was no doubt that if Sony didn't talk about the PlayStation 5, and this was assuming that they were going to show up there, things were going to leak out. Now that's not going to happen. And that's kind of, I have to say, that's a little bit disheartening for me because, I kind of figured, okay, if Sony still wants to remain silent on the PlayStation 5, and maybe they are actually waiting until sometime in April or May even, possibly even June at this point, until they really do something formal and big with the PlayStation 5, I thought at the very least we could look forward to GDC, because you would know that most of the leaks that would come out of that, if Sony were to be there and be attending GDC, would end up being legitimate. Right? And so now that Sony has come out and said that they're not going to be participating in GDC, that's not going to happen now. Although I will say we will probably still get something. Okay, just because Sony's not going to be there doesn't mean that, again, this is assuming that Sony doesn't talk about the PlayStation 5 between now and March 16th. if they don't, we'll probably still get something, because you have to understand a lot of these developers that are going to be there, these are the individuals who are making games currently with dev kits with the PlayStation 5 and the next generation Xbox. And so with all of this in mind, not all hope is lost. I know, this sounds a little bit ridiculous. I'm not trying to say, hey guys, you should be excited to look forward to future leaks, but in a way, maybe you should, because the truth is, if Sony does, as I keep saying here, remain silent between now and GDC, we know they're not going to be there, that's probably the only significant time where there's a really good chance we will get something. That won't necessarily be official, but it will be the closest thing. Like, this isn't going to be on the same level of covering leaks from, like, these forums or anything like that, or just something that somebody said where they claim they have inside sources. I mean, these are where developers who are working on next-gen games, they're all going to convene together and be talking about it and sharing this information with one another. So it's pretty much guaranteed that stuff is going to leak out regardless for both sides, not just Sony, but for Microsoft and other third-party publishers as well. But talking about the idea of Sony having to delay the PlayStation 5 until 2021, believe it or not, guys, this could actually be a real thing. On top of what's happening on a global scale, obviously you know what I'm talking about here, and Sony being concerned about the health of their workforce, and not just Sony, but other companies as well, all the companies involved in the process of bringing next-gen to the consumer by holiday 2020. Just even putting that aside, thinking about the reports we're getting about component scarcity, it really, again, if that report is to be believed, it seems like there's some truth to it. We just don't know to what extent the whole thing could be true, but I think at the very least some of it's true. When you put all of this together, it really does seem like Sony is hitting some significant bumps in the road, and potentially even just some roadblocks, right, where they have to kind of figure out how they want to work around this. And unfortunately, for those who are really looking forward to next gen, I'm aware that by me saying this, I could very well just be jumping the gun big time, but it seems like there is a pretty decent chance that Sony may evaluate the situation, and if things continue to get worse from here on out, they could actually end up delaying the launch of the PlayStation 5 out of holiday 2020 into possibly maybe let's say March 2021. I believe that is when the Nintendo Switch launched. It was kind of like around that time frame, March, and it did really well. I don't think there's any reason why Sony wouldn't be able to do that and also do well. And the same thing goes for Microsoft with the next Xbox. I think they could do the same thing and be just as well off. Because if that doesn't happen, at the very least, it's starting to look like the PlayStation 5 is going to face a scarcity issue based off of everything we know so far when it does launch, and if it does launch holiday 2020. Obviously, there's some huge implications industry-wide if something like this were to happen, because it's not just about Sony and the PlayStation 5, it's also about the timing of their games, right? And even more importantly than that, their publishing partners. You have to understand that a lot of these third-party publishers, your EAs, your Ubisofts, Activisions, all these partners involved with Sony and Microsoft, if they had to push the next-gen consoles into 2021, there'd be huge implications for them as well. And so you would just see just a huge ripple effect across the industry that would be really interesting. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, okay? Like, I'm not saying any of this in a negative way, at least I'm not trying to, because in my opinion, right, when you look at the current state of PlayStation 4 and the lineup of games between now and summer 2020, because I believe that's the latest game we know with Ghost of Tsushima that's going to be coming out from Sony, it's looking amazing. It really is. I mean, if Sony had to have a situation where they had to delay the PS5 into like the first half of 2021, and then they decided to release Ghost of Tsushima as their big holiday 2020 game after getting The Last of Us, which is going to be huge within the first half of 2020. And then you think about all the other games like Neo 2, Iron Man VR, Persona, which I think just came out, and then you also have, Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is also massive, as well as some other games that I'm forgetting to mention. It makes me feel like Sony would be perfectly fine having 2020 just be another year focused on the PlayStation 4. And then maybe making 2021 the year of the PS5. Now, again, we are very early in 2020. It's only February. We're approaching March. But I just want to have this discussion because there's no doubt that Sony dropping out of PAX East, definitely a significant thing there because they were set to have a pretty massive presence, and The Last of Us Part 2 was supposed to be there. Now we're hearing they're not going to be at GDC. That is a big thing. Like, Sony not being at GDC, it's a big thing. I don't think it's necessarily going to hurt them, but overall, it doesn't paint a very good picture for the remainder of 2020 when it comes to how these next-gen consoles are going to roll out and how smoothly it's going to happen. Again, things could change. Things could change dramatically. The situation could change in a month very dramatically from what it is now. We have to understand that Sony is just making this like a company-wide thing where they don't want to take any risks, and the health and well-being of their workforce comes first. And so I guess I'm just trying to say that just keep in the back of your mind, don't feel any less excited for next gen because it's going to come regardless, whether that's holiday 2020, which it probably will, or if, worse comes to worse, they have to delay it for multiple different reasons that are kind of out of their control. They just want to make sure everything goes right. Like, that's the thing, and this is where I want to end the video. I would much rather see Sony and Microsoft, because we haven't really heard too much out of Microsoft. It seems like on the surface everything's going fine on their end, but we don't know. They're probably facing the same exact issues. There's just not many people talking about it. I would much rather see these companies just do what they have to do to make sure everything is smooth. Like, I don't want to see a situation where things have to be rushed or they have to take massive chances on something just to hit that holiday time frame. Like, I don't want to see that. It's just like delaying a game. Like, release it when you have to release it. Looking at The Last of Us Part 2, ironically enough, if that game didn't get delayed after we got the first release date, it would have been out today. But it would have been a lesser game. They said, you know what, we need the extra time. We need a couple more months to make sure this game can go from really good to absolutely amazing to great, right? And if Sony has to do something similar with the PlayStation 5 and how smooth the launch can be, similar situation. I know I'm kind of comparing apples to oranges here because a console launch is not the exact same as a game launch, but I think you guys understand what I'm saying. I'd much rather them just do what they have to do and ensure that everything goes smoothly, but I had to take some time to talk about this, guys. I'm going to end it here because I don't want the video to be way too long because I could say more on the matter, but I think I've hit all the important points here, and so at this point, I really want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think the chances are Sony could end up delaying the PS5 launch into 2021? And let me know what you think about them not being at GDC and the implications this could have on when exactly Sony's planning on talking about this console. So, yeah, leave your thoughts on that down in the comments below. Be sure to leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload. And feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.